Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our listeners joining in. Welcome to a new edition of the Learning Curve podcast by KNOLSKAPE, where we discuss ideas that are shaping up how individuals and organizations are learning, growing, and adapting to the new environment. My name is Dr. Ritwik Mishra. I'm the Chief Client Officer at KNOLSKAPE and your host for this episode. In today's conversation, we are going to talk about a topic which is at the heart of capability building, which is how do we move from passive consumption of content to a more active, engaging, impactful learning model. And there's a plethora of content that's available today thanks to AI. But there's still a lot of discontent among business leaders and organizations on how learning is being designed and delivered. To discuss this and more, I'm joined today by our guest, Vince Jeong. Vince is the CEO for Sparkwise, which is an AI-powered platform that's reimagining professional learning. And together we are going to discuss and explore what's new in learning models, how AI changes the equation, and what does it really take to build capability, not just deliver content. Vince, a very warm welcome to you on this edition.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
Excellent. So we've got a little bit of upfront surprise for our listeners as well, which is a rapid fire section. If you would indulge us in that, I'm going to
Yeah.
begin. When's a use case where AI shouldn't be used, but often is?
It's being used to replace deep capability building today. What I mean by that is you're introducing AI for performance support, where in the flow of work, they're getting help. And yes, that is helpful for accelerating the job, but they are also mistaking it for capability building. But I don't think that actually builds capability. It just offloads cognitive thinking.
So true. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's just checking the box there. You still need a deep intervention in order to build that skill. One question every founder should ask their data team.
Is this data influencing any decision? If so, why are we measuring it?
Yeah, good one. Right. Yeah, makes sense. One habit that made you a better CEO.
I think it's trying to understand why the world works the way it does. I think founders have a tendency to have a vision, right? And that's why you start something, which I think is a positive thing,
Right.
except I think you have to build product and solution for the world that is, not the world that you want it to be, because the world that is how where demand exists and how you can actually change. And so you can't assume you have to build stuff for what people actually want already, not what you think they should want.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the philosophies guiding Apple as well as what does the consumer and what does the client want rather than what do you think you can design for the world.
Yeah.
A skill outside work you wish you were better at.
Oh, there's so many.
I was thinking the same
Yeah.
for
Um,
myself.
I wish I was maybe more patient.
Yeah,
That applies in both work and outside of work.
yeah, yeah.
Patient. What I mean by patient is, um, I tend to see either a problem or something, and usually I can get to first order answer pretty quickly. That
Right.
doesn't mean it's a good answer. I think it's often a good enough answer, but I think if I was patient, I can actually get to a better outcome. And this applies in I think a lot of domains.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a lot of, and we can have a conversation on this as well. The flip side of people saying, don't wait for it to be perfect, get the thing out. So where do you like get that balance and where do you draw the line? I think interesting response to that. Something people assume about you that isn't true.
Oh, I think a lot of people when they look at me in the like and interact with me in work, they think I'm extremely structured, super organized, and actually in real life I'm pretty disorganized and spontaneous. So I actually think my work self and my personal self are very different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's another thing that we bring into learning is how do you box people into certain categories and then how do you deal with them. a lot of time when you look at these leadership development programs, they have these concepts of, work styles and preferences, and then you box them. But you rarely know that, behind the scenes, the person can actually be a very different person than what they're projecting.
Right.
That's where I think that agility in learning and development becomes important. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for indulging us on that. I'm going to get us moving to the business end of this podcast. So the first question, Vince, is from immigrant roots to McKinsey. Right,
Mhm.
you've shared how your life was transformed by education after immigrating from South Korea, and how your time at McKinsey showed you a people development machine that actually turned recent grads into executive advisors. How did these two very different experiences shape your mission to make high quality live learning accessible to every professional, not just those in the elite firms?
Yeah, I think both experiences helped me that big transformative development is possible, right?
Yeah,
And important. So
yeah,
I think coming out of so being an immigrant, education was the ticket to
yeah.
making it. And I felt like that was my best way of contributing to our family. And my
Hmm.
parents took the risk us to move to a new world. Like
Right,
I studying hard and actually getting into a better career than I would have otherwise, I think is my best way of sort of showing up for that. And so
right,
it created it heightened the stakes for me. But also by then going to schools in the US that really sort of transformed me, I think I learned, okay, wow, like with the right education, your like trajectory can completely change. I think McKinsey was a really interesting experience where I actually think McKinsey was more transformative for me than universities in the sense that it really changed the way I think. It shaped the way I communicate. It shaped the way I show up.
right,
And I thought it was incredible to see non-educational institutions shape you this deeply,
right, right,
very, very quickly. And I think that was also an inspiration to say, hey, like, how do you bring this kind of experience to more people?
right, right. I think that also shows Vince how learning and development should be done. Right, it's how the experiences, because you talk about experiences shaping you, right, shaping your work, shaping your life, shaping your decisions. And so rarely is it tied to like a one episode of learning and development or a few episodes of learning and development, but it's the entirety of that experience that has shaped you. And so how do you create those experiences in the workplace that keep professionals learning and growing? uh, and I think in our conversations with clients, a lot of them are asking for this offline, very surprisingly, offline simulated environments where
Right.
people can actually practice, get feedback, and continue, you know, and shift their behaviors.
Yeah, and I can agree with you more on that. I think that not all experiences are the same, you know?
Yeah,
You create experiences that are like just not that well grounded in
yeah,
great way of actually changing how people think and how they work. And
yeah,
as you said, I mean, I think fundamentally for me, you have to get people to actually put in effort and
yeah,
like build new neural connections for them
yeah,
to learn.
yeah,
And the best way to do it, you started to hint at it, is practice.
absolutely.
Application,
Yeah,
feedback, reflection, the metacognitive process of stepping back, like that in like cycles of realistic context is what people really, what really changes people. And you also have
absolutely.
to create a environment where people are doing that genuinely. They're not
Yeah,
like doing it to check the box. And I think that is what a great business looks like. And I think that
yeah,
universities tend to like do it because you're literally like living there. I was like
yeah.
living on campus,
That's their
right?
objective. Yeah,
Right, that's your job is to learn, so, like, you're sort of
yeah,
graded and all of that. But in the workplace, it's harder to create that kind of environment because people's job
yeah,
is not to learn, their job is to work and, like, have a
yeah,
lot of stuff to do. And I think
yeah.
McKinsey was distinctive at creating these environments.
Mm,
Both informal training programs were also in just everyday work
yeah,
that got people to in the cycles of rapid practice, feedback, application, reflection, you
yeah,
know, and that's
yeah,
why, that was shaped so much.
yeah. I think that's where the ecosystem around a professional starts to work as well, right? So your manager becomes an important part in the experiences that you're having and the feedback that you're getting. And so it's as much as making sure that you have the right manager as a coach, and not just, the learning experiences, but there are people around you that are able to provide you with those experiences and the feedback.
Right.
So keeping us moving, you've spoken a lot about this concept of multiplayer learning model, and we were very intrigued to know more about it, given that traditional e-learning often suffers from completion rates which are much below 10% and sometimes in the single digits. How are your learning models able to drive completion rates of 85% and above and engagement rates of 95%?
Yeah. And like when we first started, we used to use the word like multiplayer a lot. I think it was kind of fun. I think over time we've probably switched it to more something a little more easy to sort of think about. And it's essentially small group
Small group.
learning. And um, I think there's a few things there that drive success. And uh, you mentioned completion and engagement. I think that's sort of like a interim input. I think what we've actually seen is the what we're most excited about is that we see 90% plus of people reporting they're they're actually applying the job on on the day-to-day work, and when you survey their supervisors, like 90% of them say, hey, like I actually see significant change in the behaviors they've done. So I think these are the things that then really translate to actual outcomes, which we're excited about. Um, but I would say, like, why so-called multiplayer or small group? um, it kind of ties to what I said a little earlier. I think the
Mhm.
biggest challenge of workplace learning is it's really hard to get people to care enough.
Yeah.
So people
Yeah.
are going through the motion of learning. They're clicking through things. They're
Right.
like looking at stuff, but they're not actually grappling with the content. They're like sort of, I need to get through this as fast as possible. And
Right.
it's not
Right.
just passive content or videos that are like this. I would argue a lot of like even role plays that are being created with AI or things like that, like without the right scaffolding, and once the novelty runs out, people
Runs
are
out.
not held accountable to care about it.
Right. Right.
So I think for us, what is the thing that gets people to actually show up and engage? We
Yeah.
found other humans being there is one of the greatest unlock of human behavior.
Okay.
Getting people to persist on doing things they don't otherwise want to do. So the small group is a format that really maximizes accountability in a scalable way, at least in the way we found it. And that's
Yeah.
why small group is so important. And beyond accountability, so I think that's actually the biggest sort of like
Right.
factor. But beyond that, also, I think it does enrich people's processing of information and creates new neural connections because humans are social creatures. We learn by communicating, by speaking stuff out loud to someone and hearing back what they say. It
Right.
actually leads to much deeper aha moments and insights that
Right.
stick in our brain.
Right.
And and so I think it does also enrich the quality of learning, but
Right.
I think those two things are at play with the small group format.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one, of course, is the sharing of the experiences among the small group, right?
Yeah.
And then just learning from that. But it's also like you said, as you are constructing your thoughts and putting words around those thoughts, things start to become a lot more clearer, right? And you even start to realize what are the constraints, what are the challenges you will face in applying the learning, and those kind of bring up those questions for everybody else to respond as well in that small group.
Yeah, I love the word you use constructing, right? It's
Right.
a constructive learning where, to your point, you're forming your ideas. Like people
Right.
talk so much about personalization.
Right.
I frankly actually am like, that's a word I really don't like the way it's been translated in the ed tech world. Um, But in any case, I think that in a small group learning, actually, in some ways, it is personalized in the sense that you are looking at content, but you're actually forming personal connection to
Right.
the actual thing and then actually incorporating it into your own world. But because it's holding this environment where you're forced to do it and you
Right.
enjoy doing that with
Right.
others.
Right. Just a question, Vince. Would you think that the background and the context with which the small group is getting assembled also matters to the effectiveness of the learning?
Can you share more what you mean by
Yeah.
like background and yeah, context?
Yeah. So the small group coming together with a similar background and similar context.
Mm,
And I'm just thinking aloud here. If I have a group which I'm able to associate with a lot more because of similar backgrounds,
mm,
um, and then if I raise a challenge that I'm facing in, say, influencing others, and somebody says, "Oh, yes, I do that well, and here's how I do it," I can relate to that a lot more because the backgrounds are similar. And I can think, okay, yes, this matters to me or this applies to me as well. And I can start to think about applying whatever I'm hearing from this person.
Um, I agree to it like maybe halfway. I
Sure,
think
sure. Yeah.
backgrounds are like kind of blunt indicators to that unlock this kind of insight. Like the reason why I said is because I've seen people with very different backgrounds actually really have rich experience because you're like, oh
Right,
my god, you are from a very different background but have the
right,
same issue, or
right,
the lens through which you're looking at it is really interesting.
right.
I've just never thought of it. Like, for
Yeah.
example, even in like some of the stuff that we do on AI learning, actually bringing cross-functional people and seeing how different functions use AI is very eye-opening to people because like I just have not
Yeah.
thought about using AI in that way, but I can see an application, right? So I actually
Right,
think
right.
that it's like less background is like a proxy for it, but an imperfect proxy.
Mm.
I think the thing that you need is you need everyone to be able to relate to the topic at hand, like actually relate.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it
yeah.
because once the moment like the thing that you're talking about is not relevant for some other people, then then you lose like sort
Mm.
of vantage point, and it's like not that sort of they're going to be not as connected to the conversation. But secondly, I
Right,
do think
right.
people's level of maturity or understanding on the topic is is probably good to be shared, right? So like if I
Mm.
am bring a very like very experienced expert on a topic and then you
Right,
become a novice person, and so the expert person is talking at this level and when this
right,
person's
right.
asking like some of the most basic stuff, I just think that
Yeah,
there's a disconnect and they're not able to
yeah.
construct the right thing. So
True,
you do
true.
want people who have similar Lego pieces in their head in the sense of like level of complexity and like
Right,
relevance
right,
to construct something together. But
right.
that's something I would say. But it's like background is not is a kind of like a blunt proxy for it.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. So don't go too deep into bringing that similarity into that small group, but
Yeah.
I think keep it at a level where they are able to understand each other.
Right.
Great. Um, Vince, one of the things that a lot of organizations face, and I'm actually going to split this question into two. So we are hearing a lot of organizations in our client base saying, "Get us back to live learning."
Mm,
Right? We want those experiences. We want those interactions. We want those engagements. We want to hear from a experienced subject matter expert come and talk to us. Right? So that naturally causes that facilitation bottleneck that you have also spoken about. Right?
mm,
Uh, and that's one of the primary barriers to scaling live learning.
mm.
How impactful do you think AI can be in guiding groups through structured experiences without a live facilitator, while ensuring the learning remains social and interactive rather than passive?
Yeah.
Or
So
is there any other, yeah,
no, go ahead, please. Please finish your thought.
any other way that you think that the bottleneck can be addressed without losing out on sharing of experiences?
Um, I, the second question is harder for me to answer because there may be things I just haven't really thought about. I think on
Right.
the first question around how impactful can it be, um, so I think it can be very, very impactful, at least because that's the thing that we do and we see great sort of feedback there, and I can talk about it. But one thing I would actually want to clarify is I don't think it's about AI guiding groups. So a common sort of misconception people have when they like hear about our platform is, okay, does this mean like AI is acting as a facilitator? Like there's an AI avatar sitting there and guiding the groups?
Right.
And we say like absolutely not. And like when we
Mm,
talk to adults, like I don't hear them wanting a AI masquerading as a human telling people what to do. I
mm,
think it's more about creating an environment where like people are enabled and empowered to have a really productive conversation. And AI is
right.
playing different roles in that like room to like
Right.
gently sort of incentivize the right behaviors, but it's
Right.
not AI personified in like as a guide. Um,
Interesting.
but what I think is that when I when I hear, like, leaders talking about, "We want more in person," I think there are parts of me that say, like, "I totally get it, and that can't
Right.
be replaced," and other parts of me that say, "But before you go all the way, there's something that you can actually try." Because you definitely can't really fully replace people being, like, in person, in the same room, like, talking and then getting to know each other, building trust. There's something irreplaceable about that, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but the irreplaceable parts are like less learning. There are other things that you're trying to create that are like connectivity, sense of
Mm,
belonging, right? And
mm,
stuff.
mm.
I think those leaders, when they push for live learning to create it, they just haven't seen what is a great version of a virtual experience that actually gets people engaged. Because of what they've seen is live Zoom webinars where people have their videos turned off,
Right.
and then you throw them into breakout rooms, and then 20% of the breakout rooms do the thing they've been asked to do, and 80% just like sat around, talked about random stuff, and came back.
Oh, right.
So they're like, we don't want that.
Right.
And in their mind, they're asking for, okay, I want to solve that problem, but my solution is live. So let's go to live.
Yeah.
But there is a solution to solve that problem that is
Mm,
not fully live and doesn't run into facilitation bottleneck. And that's the
yeah.
thing
Yeah.
we offer to them. So it's sort
Yeah.
of that, it's a bit of a hybrid reaction to the question that
Yeah.
you asked.
Yeah. No, I think like you said, right? I mean, they don't know what a solution is. In their mind, this is a solution. So
Right.
let's just go there, right? Without knowing that there's another solution that can be offered. But Vince, do you think there's a generational preference here as well to the medium of learning live versus what you are offering or virtual? Have you seen that comment
We
coming up?
we haven't seen. It might exist. Like there might be some like undercurrents of it, perhaps, but we just haven't seen it in data.
Okay. Okay.
Like we haven't seen, for example, significant preference for our thing for younger cores, whereas like like mid
Right.
level cores, we just haven't seen that.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So just keeping us moving on, you've noted that many companies assume giving employees access to tools like Chat GPT or
Mhm.
Copilot equates to genuine enablement. Yet these initiatives often fail. So, in your experience, what are the most common mindset shifts and workflow redesigns leaders overlook when trying to build an AI capable workforce?
Yeah, I think there are a few many parts of the question, but let me like try to maybe highlight a couple of things. I think the fundamental issue of giving people ChatGPT
Yeah.
and expecting it to be like, oh, problem solved, is you assume people are inherently really motivated to enable themselves in the way that you want them to be enabled.
Mhm.
Because they'll ask the right questions, they'll pull the right learning out of these tools. They will spend the extra time to do that on their own. Most organizations are woeful at creating incentives and
Mhm.
like reasons for people to actually learn.
Right.
Most organizations are very bad and generally motivating people to do things that they want them to do. They usually do it through directives
Right.
and mandates. So I think giving a tool like ChatGPT and Copilot can work wonderfully if you actually have the rest of the organization figured out, so they naturally are incentivized to do what's best for the company. But
Hmm.
in a world where basically every company is bad at doing that, only like a handful of companies I've ever seen have sort of figured that out better than others. I think just giving them AI tools isn't going to
Yeah. Yeah.
work for long-term sort of enablement. I think it is useful. I think these tools are useful for people getting done literally the tasks that they have to do at hand. But I think a
Right.
lot of stuff at work isn't just about literally the task you have to do at hand. You have to do for like medium, longer term things, and they just won't do that with that tool.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, I think in terms of workflow redesigns, I genuinely think this is a very, very hard thing to do.
Mhm.
Um, because one, it requires a really high level of problem solving, like to look at a system and figure out how can we do this differently. But it's not even just a cognitive barrier. A lot of it is around how do you align people to change? Who has mandate to change these things? How do you like make these changes? It
Yeah.
touches all these other tools, other teams. How do you inform them about the change and how do you like bring that to life? Um, what are the risks if you mess this up?
Right.
It runs into so many different things that like just telling people, hey, to redesign your workflow, this doesn't work because there's so many constraints around that.
Right.
And most people don't feel empowered to be in that position either. And
Right.
so I think that a lot of organizations overlook the conditional barriers that don't allow people to optimally like behave and do the work, but don't do the hard work of solving those organizational barriers and just try to solve it like through training. Like just force people to like train people
Yeah.
into a different behavior. And you're like, that's
Right.
not gonna work because like they're not incentivized or enabled to then behave, even if they know how to do it.
Right. 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 No, and I think that's one of the problems impacting the adoption of AI as well. You're trying to Organizations are trying to create a fine balance between keeping all the guardrails and the data securities and everything else in place, but they want everybody in the workforce to be on AI tools, start using AI tools, and do wonders. And that's where the business leaders come in and ask, "What's the ROI, and what have you done with AI?" But then when you start practicing it or doing something with it, there's just too many constraints put on people to use it. So
Yeah. And on this AI front point, like to add on that, I think people also like this is sort of the mindset shifting you asked in the question, right? Like, this is yet another sort of situation where a lot of enterprise leaders are like, we need change. Therefore, let's train people until they change. I'm like, this is not, I mean, skill gap that is a piece of the problem,
right,
but AI
right,
is not that hard to learn.
right, right,
There's a bigger problem, right? Of people being fearful of what it is to their job. People are like, why do I need to do this? I don't understand what benefit this has for me. There's all
right,
this other stuff that's not being
right.
like addressed properly. And
Yeah,
simply like trying to teach people like prompting techniques is
yes,
a very narrow
yeah,
lever to a broader problem.
yeah, yeah. I think that's where the whole change management process becomes important. Is how are you thinking
Yeah.
about AI adoption comprehensively, and think about change management processes as well.
Yeah.
Addressing the fears, like you're saying, addressing the fears that people have.
Yeah. And like really some of the most, you know, forward thinking and successful organizations, I think, are very thoughtful at change management. And I'm amazed when I see these leaders like thinking through AI and bringing people along, but it's few and far in between from what I see.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, Vince, one of the topics is as AI is getting prominent, is also that there's a concern about over reliance on AI in professional development. And
Yeah.
so, how can organizations help learners develop the essential human capabilities like critical thinking, for example, right, or social intelligence? Um, and how can organizations, maintain that balance of tech versus human capabilities?
Yeah. I think it's, to answer this question, I think it's helpful to be like more like for the world to sharpen, what do we mean by critical thinking and judgment? I think in this context, I think it fundamentally actually comes down to the following. If
Yeah.
you looked at an output, like forget whether AI created or not. If you looked at an output, do you have the ability to see if it's any good?
Hmm.
Like, and if it's not very good, can you articulate why it's not good and like push whoever
Right.
did the work or whatever system did the work to like push it towards something that
Right.
meets R? And I think, historically, people would do the same task over and over again, get feedback from their managers or clients, and then like have time to learn, oh, like it's not very good, and then like build pattern recognition. And I think what
Mm.
people are really saying is today, when new hires come in or junior people come in, they're using it to create something that like sort of looks really, it's like they spend no effort creating the thing and they're copy pasting the thing and saying like submitting it.
Right.
And
Right.
it's short circuiting like the work that's required to build a pattern recognition, if you will.
Right. Right.
So I think in order to solve this problem, my general sort of view is there are a couple of things to really for people to learn. I think they need to first of all learn in different kinds of deliverables or workflows or tasks, what
Hmm.
does great look like? Most
Hmm.
organizations have not defined their standard of excellence.
Right. Right.
And so I think you have to do the hard work of defining, okay, if the task is creating a report, how do you tell a great report from not a good report? If your
Right.
task is like replying to client emails, what does a great email look like? Not great email look like? These are tacit knowledges people have developed, and you have to make it concrete for people to actually
Right.
then learn through practice application feedback in an environment, right? And I think like you want to create this environment for people to practice it if it's no longer done in the real workplace.
Right.
Secondly, I think people need to learn how to artfully push back on AI and guide it to make adjustments because the what we're seeing is that people don't naturally do it very effectively. So you can teach them
Mm.
ways to use AI to do it in a more efficient way so they get the work done faster instead of like burning tokens like endlessly just by saying like please fix and then like AI does a thing and it doesn't actually really fix anything, you know? So I
Right.
think a couple of levers to pull, but I really do think it starts from you got to define your standard of excellence. Everything is
Mm.
downstream from that.
Mm. Interesting. And I think again, the way your leader is projecting that work to you or delegating that work to you, and like you said, defining, what great looks like becomes critical and important. And I think right now we are just doing a very cursory job of that delegation, saying, get this job done. And so the team member is just getting it done through various tools, technologies, whatever is needed, without actually knowing what would a great product look like.
Right. And honestly, from for their end, like once AI creates something, it looks like good enough. I mean, there's a corollary point I would make is that I think the proof of work, the definition of like proof of work has really shifted.
Yeah.
I think pre AI, volume of output was
Yeah.
proof of work. You
Right.
created something from nothing. You did
Right.
work.
On your own.
I
Yeah.
say distillation and synthesis is proof of work, actually, right? So the shorter the thing you created, the more
Mm.
concise it is. That is actually proof of work. In fact, if you come back to me with like high volume of output, which back in the day would have said you put in our work, you put in no work because I know you could have generated in seconds.
Right.
And
Right.
that definition has shifted, but I feel like the way people understand how to evaluate work and how to like set
Right.
standards have not
Yeah.
changed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that in itself is a skill, right? How do you distill that? How do you synthesize that information to what is actually needed? That in itself is a skill. And there's no AI tools to do that. That's still a human at work, right? You take everything that you are getting from the various models and distill it to what's needed. That
Right.
still is where your skills are coming in play.
Yeah, because like, you know, and once again, if you told like someone who's new to the workplace and say, "Hey, distill," they'll just give it to AI and then summarize
Distill.
because they don't
Yes.
know the difference between summary and synthesis, right?
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so to your point, this has to be taught as well because
Right.
otherwise, I think distillation is like, oh, just take a 5-page thing and tell AI to make it a 1-page thing. Great,
Yeah.
it's done, but that's
That's
not
it.
it, right? It's like
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
far more insightful than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, Vince, I'm getting us into one of the most important topics on learning and development, and you have quite a few point of views on this. Most learning leaders struggle to move beyond completion and satisfaction scores to prove the value of learning. Right? Uh, how can organizations bridge the gap between learning and real life application and showcase that as a case study to business leaders?
Yeah. I think I can make a couple of different points here. The first is a bit of a more meta point, and that's not directly answering your question, but then I'll get to your question. I think that I think in the desire to go beyond satisfaction and completion scores, I think actually a lot of L&D industry like overshoot and then
Mm.
say, okay, now we gotta like tie ourselves to business results. Like learning doesn't matter unless you move the revenue number. And I think it's actually like really risky because when you start to go into business results, there are so many things in that causal chain and
Right.
input variables that need to go right for that to actually happen.
Right.
And whether people can do something is a piece of that, but in fact, there are other pieces that are even more important, right? The organizational barriers we talked about, or like the
Right.
market conditions, or whatever it might be.
Right. Right.
I think it's really important if you're trying to go beyond completion satisfaction, which is absolutely the right push to do.
Right.
We'll focus on what is the job that learning is supposed to do and how do you ensure that that's been closed? And if that's closed, but behavior change or results are not still happening, how do you help business then figure out what are the other barriers that they have to fix that's not learning?
Mm.
To me,
Mm.
that is like best in class L&D, sort of like data measurement and so on. So to that
Right.
extent, then the job of L&D is to be able to tell people, hey, the skill gap has been closed, or people now actually know how to do this. And this has been traditionally been very hard to do because when you're trying to so if you're trying to teach people just like SOPs or information, then you can just give them quizzes. And then through quizzes, you can get a good enough understanding of like, do people remember this or not? That's
Right.
relatively easy. But
Right.
this has been really hard when it comes to skills or capabilities that are not like, do you remember this? But it's more, can you do this in context? This is why I think being able to measure what do people actually do on things that are realistic is helpful.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so for example, the way our tool like really functions is that because it's putting people in these small group things and getting them to like literally do tasks that they would normally have
Right.
to do. And then
Right.
like sort of measuring how are they doing it? What are they talking about? What are the insights they're walking out with? What are the things they say they're going to do differently? And all of these different things, it generates a lot closer data point around, do we believe this skill gap still exists or not? And I think
Mm.
that's where we continue to have to go. Like, I wouldn't say we've really cracked the perfect way to fully quantify this yet, but
Right.
I see sort of path to us getting there. And I do think AI is a huge help here because AI is very good at generating data and then analyzing at an extent where it was impossible before. So I think we're getting to that point soon. But I think this, in general, anyways, this is my viewpoint on what data measurement means for L&D.
Yes. Sure. Just um, continuing on this topic, Vince, I would love to hear your response to what's the job of learning.
Mm. I think simply put, like
Yeah.
job of learning is to make sure people have the capability uh, they need to do their job well. Like they
Right.
can do their job. Like if you ask them to do X,
Right.
like they're not constrained because they don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Within Vince,
simply,
yeah.
I think most simply put, sort of that's what it is, right? Now at different levels, that looks different. Like for a leader, that
Yeah.
actually is not
Yeah.
just about their job, but like their team's job and so on. But it's most fundamentally like make sure people know how to do the thing you need them to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I was asking this question because I really loved your response of, what are the other barriers that are not enabling this person to do the job, right? It's no longer learning, job at that point in time. because the learning team and the learning function has done their job, but there are other barriers probably in the work environment that is preventing this person from doing their job, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to isolate that and address that as well. So if you have this kind of a conversation with a business leader, one of the pushbacks that I um, perceive or foresee is, that's a learning job, right? That's how business leaders are going to push back and say, this is what you're supposed to do. It's not our job to look at.
Yeah, so I've personally not been in a conversation like that, so I don't know exactly how it play out, but I suspect what I would really help them understand in that situation is to be very specific. What
Yeah,
are possible barriers then beyond learning that exist? Because once you start listing them, it's
right.
it's like sort of absurd for the business leader to keep on saying this is
Mm.
learning, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
what you're saying is, okay, we taught people how to sell like this new method with this new methodology. However, like your incentive system does not incent them at all to move this thing. And in fact, like every incentive system actually rewards them using this old one.
Right.
Like if you name that problem, for them to keep on saying no, but this is a learning job, like sort of becomes like absurd. So I think that like once you're clear about it and specific
Right.
about it, and it's not about like combating against the business person, but it's literally like problem solving together. Okay, let's dissect it together. Let's really
Fine.
understand what's going on here.
Right.
I think they'll understand. Like anyone who's sort of now whether they understand it and they know how to solve the other issues is a different
Is that-
problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would say helping them surface the right problem is a different problem than like you trying to solve everything for them when you don't have the ability to solve those things for them and assume you can and then set wrong expectations with them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I like that part of, it's a partnership with the business. And so sitting together and trying to understand, how do you create that environment, including learning for the person to perform at the work. Vince, last question from our side. When introducing AI into the workplace, employees often fear job displacement, job loss. We've spoken about this. How should leaders use modeling norms and incentives to address these fears?
Yeah, so this is a hard question, and I think a lot of people are thinking about this. My perspective is if you're in organizations that have done layoffs with the narrative of we're doing more AI, there's literally nothing you can really do to make sure not people don't feel like fearful. Like you've already shown that you're using AI
Right.
to like displace jobs, right? Um, so I think people pay attention to like how firms actually behave versus like what they say.
Mm, mm,
Now, um, things that they can help mitigate, like sort of counteract some of that, or help people at least still try to embrace it. I think is typically around. I think it's like maybe two things. First and foremost, I think people should be honest about the state of things. I think you should
right.
be like, hey, be honest about what you figured out and what you're still figuring out. Um,
Mm,
like, uh, this is we know what to do about AI on this front, but this is stuff that's sort of not figured out yet, and this is what we're doing about it. So, like, be real in the way you communicate. But
right.
secondly, try to put forward a vision that
Right.
includes humans flourishing in
Mm,
AI, even if you haven't fully figured it out. Hey, like our view is that AI can really become an augmentation
right.
of human capability, and these are the three things we're doing to really test those things out right now in the company.
Right. Right.
More broadly, I think people have fears around adopting a tool when they can't see like so what of it? Like what is the
Mm,
end state of my role when I incorporate this tool? And I
mm,
think one thing you can do is help people envision
mm,
what is on the other side after the work
mm.
has been designed.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
if you haven't fully figured it out, start to sketch out together. Like, let's say, hey, you're a you're a customer support sort of agent today, and a lot of the work that you are doing with like low value transactional stuff
Right.
is can be automated. I mean, like,
Right.
people can see that. You don't wanna lie about it. But I think you can
Right.
say, "Hey," but think about it, there's actually a lot of really high value client support cases that are currently under supported. The support wait times are too long, and we actually need humans to be focused on those. And so
Mm.
what it actually means is that you're gonna have better, like, more time to focus on those cases.
Right.
Or maybe you can say, "Hey, we actually think that your ability to connect with customers can now extend beyond support and go into customer success or some higher order functions where we're gonna need more help." And so we
Right.
see that as a possible path for
Right.
where you can go. You don't need to promise things for sure, but you can start to give them a picture of, okay, actually, where I end up is something that I think is aspirational or interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if people are too afraid of that and they like don't want that, they might not even be the right person on your organization anyway, because you actually do need your workforce to step up, right? But I
Yeah.
think it's like that vision
Yeah.
is not being set and just telling people just use it. Like,
Yes.
it's gonna happen, just like use it as much as possible. And people are like, well, I think the only thing that I can see is that I'm gonna get automated, so like, I don't want to do it. I think it's a
Yeah.
very natural response from people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and if you're not using it, you get berated and you get disciplined. And that's the other side that organizations are using. But then there's absolutely no, and every employee has an aspiration. They want to reach somewhere, they want to grow. I think this is a great mechanism for leaders to talk to them, saying, this is how this can help you in your career, in your growth plans, in your aspirations that you want to achieve. But I don't think those conversations are on the table right now. I think it's all about, get AI, use AI, and just give me a percentage of how much efficient you are now because of AI, because I need to report that data up the value chain, up the chain.
Yeah. There's a thing I recently sort of started saying, which is I think all these kind of fears around AI come more down to the failure of the imagination of the CEO and the leader. What I mean is that there's a lot of market pressure to
Right,
show value and ROI of AI.
right.
And I think organizations are flocking to the easiest thing right now they can do, which is counting heads and cutting them and then showing dollar value of it.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, but if your organization had imagination and aspiration, you should have a really long backlog of innovations and things you just haven't been able to do. New markets you can enter, new products you can do, new
yeah,
ways you can fulfill customer demand that you've never been able to get to. If you actually had that imagination, then you
yeah,
would be actively thinking about redeploying some of the
yeah,
capabilities that get freed up towards those things.
yeah,
But in absence of that imagination, the only thing you can do is efficiency.
yeah,
But it's a
yeah.
race to the bottom because every company has access to the same AI models. There's
Right,
no competitive advantage that you're creating for yourself, and
right,
in fact, you're like going to automate yourself away as an entity.
right.
So I think sooner or later, companies have to like grapple with this. And I think the way that CEOs step up to this moment and respond will really shape the level of
Absolutely.
short-term disruption faced by the workforce.
Right, right, right. And the competitive differentiator that the company is creating, the market share that you are able to lap up during this time. But Vince, thank you so much for your time. It was absolutely insightful. Enjoyed the conversation, and I'm sure everybody tuning in is also going to take something away from this conversation. We spoke about AI, we spoke about learning effectiveness, we spoke about impact measurement and business impact. I'm sure there's something for all the listeners that are tuning in. Thank you again so much for your time with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
All right. For all the listeners joining in, thank you for tuning in and stay tuned for the next episode where we'll bring you more conversations around learning and development. Thank you.